Over the past several months, we've heard stories about escalating prices, gas prices, food prices, and we've heard about stores running out of certain foods and distributors running out of certain foods. I've heard stories about people panic buying certain items, and I don't think too much about it. If an individual starts buying up all the chicken or toilet paper, I think maybe that person is out of it. Maybe they know something, but it's just one person. Now, you can get worried if people panic buy certain items because they can cause shortages artificially. But now we got the story that grocery stores are stockpiling food, frozen meats, and cleaning supplies in fear of rising costs. They're betting that if they buy more of their food right now, they can sell it later after inflation and protect their buying power. But this says something interesting. Speculating on gold or cryptocurrency, I get. You think this is going to become more valuable in the future, and who knows how long it'll take. Grocery stores are effectively speculating on perishable goods. So this kind of freaked me out because what do these grocery stores know that we don't? I think they know the very obvious reality that inflation is going to get substantially worse over the next 4 to 12 months and probably much worse after that. And the shortages may be getting worse as well. You see, restaurants have known this. They've been trying to buy up beef and chicken and other meats, and I think even eggs. They've been having a hard go of it because there are shortages. There's also labor shortages, driver shortages, and it's not just here in the US, it's affecting the UK as well. When an individual, as I stated, starts stockpiling, I'm like, preppers are going to prep, right? But when the grocery stores are seeing on the distribution end an inability to buy certain goods, a lack of drivers, deliveries possibly showing up late, so they say we better buy as much as we can right now. That, to me, is a very serious red flag. Now, here's what I do. I take a look at the stories about shortages, gas prices, and things we might need. And I see a bunch of stories, but there's also something weird about this. Where's the big mainstream coverage? Where are the cable news networks? Where are the newspapers, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal saying, heads up, things could get bad? Now, of course, the Wall Street Journal did cover grocery stores stockpiling all of this food. But when you look up food shortages, you get a bunch of stories from local news outlets. Perhaps these local outlets are noticing a trend in their area. When you zoom out to the bigger picture, it's like I've been saying for the past several months. Something bad is on the horizon. These stores seem to know it. And perhaps we can't exactly predict what's going to happen. But I have reason to believe I think we're in for some hard times. Why? Beef shortages, bacon shortages, chicken shortages, prices on the rise, no drivers, no labor, nobody wanting to work. So what happens next? I don't know. I don't know. But I hope you've been paying attention to what they're not telling you. You know, a lot of us are distracted by culture war issues. Brian Stelter comes on the TV on CNN and says, Tucker Carlson is the new Alex Jones. And we all go, oh, that's crazy. Now, it's important we talk about those things because political extremism is tearing this country apart, but maybe it's all a distraction. UFOs, they say, the UFO report is out and we can't explain any of this. And we're like, wow. Meanwhile, they're chucking loaves of bread at us, bread and circuses, to keep us distracted from what might actually cause disruption. What causes revolution? It is not powerful pundits screaming about other powerful pundits or a king being despised, partly. Mostly, it's about a lack of food and access to resources. And when people start realizing it's getting bad, and they will regardless of the media coverage, then things start lighting up, figuratively speaking. People are going to go to the stores. They're going to notice what's happening. And what do we get now? I tell you, one of the craziest stories we've seen, CNBC, the upside to inflation, rising wages. What? That's right. The official narrative is don't be scared that you can't find food or that it costs 25% more. Eventually, your salary will increase too. Now, this is crazy to me. They're trying to act like all the bad stuff that's happening, actually good, actually a good thing. Well, let's talk about this. Let's take a look at what's going on with these grocery store stockpiling, why they're doing it and what it means for you. And I hope you are paying attention. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com, become a member, and you'll get access to our members area. Right now, we just got one show. We got the Timcast members only podcast with our guests from the Timcast IRL podcast, exclusive for you, talking about all the things YouTube does not want us talking about. But we're going to be adding more shows. On Explain shows, we're adding more journalists. We're going to add guest opinion columns. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to have audio-only versions. With your membership, you are helping us grow this company, expand, and report the real news with real fact checkers to challenge that establishment and their narrative. But don't forget, you can also help out by liking this video right now, subscribing to this channel, and sharing this video with your friends and family. Anybody you think should hear this. This is not about politics. We'll get a little political for sure, because there is an administration that is running things as we see right now. This is mostly about the immediate effect of the policies, what's happening. This is what you need to know about. Now, I don't know where this leads to, but when you got stores stockpiling frozen meat and that expires, doesn't that kind of weird you out? They're expecting this meat to be sold in the next few months, which says to me they think something bad is going to happen in the next few months. That's why it's important we talk about this stuff. Here's a story from Business Insider. Grocery stores are stockpiling food and cleaning supplies amid rising costs and demand. They say Paul McLean, the chief merchandising officer of Stu Leonard's, told Insider that the supermarket chain is purchasing 50% more inventory than usual and that they've bought ahead whenever possible to protect margins. He specifically mentioned buying more paper products and imported goods like pasta sauce, pasta, and olive oil. We're buying more ingredients for home cooks, including flour and spices. We're also buying ahead on cleaning products for the fall and back to school. McLean added, they've seen an increase in sales of lobster, shrimp, prime meat, and organic produce, with frozen food sales increasing 20% over the past year. Some grocery stores are running into issues getting everything they've ordered from suppliers. The Wall Street Journal first reported on Tuesday. It runs the risk of making a bad situation worse. Mark Griffin, president of B&R Stores, Inc., told the Journal, pay attention to this, please. You've seen what happens when regular people run out the door and try and buy up all the beans, right? Then there's no beans for you. Not because there's a shortage of beans, but because one dude bought them all from the store. When a bunch of crazy people run to the store, they buy up all of one product, there's none for you. But once the restockers come out, they can put the beans back because the truth is there are copious amounts of beans for everybody. But when there's a sudden surge in demand, that creates shortages. They are telling us right now that even the markets are having trouble filling their orders. They're buying more. They're scared. The panicking has moved up to the next level. Now, distributors may start getting squeezed out in a similar way, but this means the shortages are getting real. If the shortage is just that too many people are buying in the immediate, I mean, those people are eating that food. Food expires. Now, I get it. Beans can last a couple of years, but frozen meat? That was an alarm bell to me. Frozen meat does not last that long. Check this out. I pulled it up. I fact-checked this stuff. Healthline. Can I still eat it? Freezer. You can keep steaks for 6 to 12 months. Chicken for up to 9 months. Pork chops are okay from 4 to 6 months. Lean fish, 6 to 8 months. Fatty fish, 2 to 3 months. Think about what that means. On the low end, a steak may only last 6 months. Now, who's going to the store and saying, I'd like your 3-month-old frozen steak? It's probably going to taste terrible. It tastes like freezer. They don't want to sell to you stuff that's about to go bad. But they're expecting, within this time period, the product to move off their shelves. Let me now slow down and explain to you why this freaks me out. Let's say it's not about inflation. It's about product shortages and something really bad coming on the horizon. If they're buying more meat saying there's more demand, regular people are cleaning off the shelves at the supermarket. Now, I mentioned there can be an artificial shortage caused by one person buying up everything. But if people in general are buying up as much as they can, when there's no real panic or mainstream news about this, that means the demand is just there for this food people want to eat. The store then says, we need to carry more of this food because we're selling more of this food. So they do. Now they can't fill their orders. We're now at the point where the shortage has reached the distributor level. What comes next? Distributors can't produce enough. People don't get enough food. And like I said, what causes revolutions? When people don't get enough food. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to see a revolution or some kind of crazy catastrophe. I'm just letting you know the panic selling, the panic buying, the shortages are expanding to the next level. Take a look at this. Check this out. I was mixing them up. ABC Cincinnati. Local restaurants struggle with supplies, employee shortages as economy reopens. Now, I can say something very simple as to why this is happening. But still, it doesn't change the fact that the disruption is potentially on the way that could affect you. When all of these small businesses shut down because of COVID, people probably ate out very often. As that article said, a lot of these stores are saying people are cooking at home more. Makes sense. Your favorite restaurant got shut down. You were forced to stay home, so there's a bigger demand on supermarkets. They can't handle the load. Hopefully, what this means is the shortages we're seeing are just kind of like, you ever take a rope and you whip it and you can watch that wave travel down the rope? Hopefully, that's all we're dealing with. And once the whip cracks, supply normalizes. But local restaurants that are open still can't get supplies. And that's where I think things are starting to get freaky. Now, I could argue that stores shut down, so people are eating at home more often. I think it's a fair point to make. But when the restaurants that are still open can't get supplies either. Okay, now I'm like, I hope y'all have been paying attention. Now, we may be paranoid. Maybe the people who are just swimming in ignorance, hey, that's bliss, right? They're not going to pay attention to any of this. They're going to go to the store. They're going to be like, I guess we're out of beef today. And they're going to go buy mac and cheese or something. Maybe the shortages get worse. The restaurants can't get the supplies they need. We've seen that over the past several months. How many times have I done segments about this? The supermarkets are now saying they can't fill their orders, and they're trying to buy up quickly in fear of inflation. What if it gets worse? Do you want to be that person fighting over the last can of beans in the parking lot of a Stu Leonard's? That's the people who aren't paying attention. That's why it's so important to focus on the news and to know what's happening. Now, you may go out, and don't panic buy. You make things worse when you do this. But make sure you've got your standard supply of goods. Don't put off going to the grocery store. What happens right now? If you go buy a can of, a bin of beans that lasts 30 years. I got a bunch. We got a bunch of this 25-year freeze-dried food. Your worst case scenario is you eat it. Well, I guess your worst case scenario is there's a massive panic, a revolution, people are starving, and you're huddling in your basement holding your can of emergency food. But I don't think that's particularly likely. No, if nothing really happens and the world is fine, you know what I did? I cracked open one of the bins. We had stroganoff. It was delicious. I don't got to worry about it. It's just food. You eat food. But what if you don't pay attention and you're not prepared? You don't got to prepare for the apocalypse or a revolution or a revolt or a collapse or whatever, but it certainly feels like things are getting worse. You don't have to think the world is going to end to want to have some emergency supplies. Anybody tells you, who mocks you, well, let them be the one left holding the bag, knocking on your door, begging. Because we all learned the story of the ants and the grasshopper, right? Grasshopper was like, yo, I'm not preparing for winter. I don't care. Y'all are dumb, ants. And the ants are all like, dude, you better get that food ready because winter's coming. Then winter came and the grasshopper was like, please feed me. They laughed and he froze to death. Like, that's the actual story. I think in like the modern adaptation, the ants share their plentiful bounty and the grasshopper learns his lesson. But like the original story was the grasshopper just starves. Yeah, you don't want to be the grasshopper. Be the industrious ant who prepares for the winter. Now, about that media. I mentioned they're not really telling us about this for the most part. I mean, the Wall Street Journal did report this, and Business Insider is telling us about this. But where are all the big stories? Why is it a local news outlet telling us that there's shortages? Why is it, look, North Texas restaurants struggling with food shortages July 6th. This is huge to me because I go on Google and I search these stories to follow up. I see a story, grocery stores running low, stockpiling. And I say, wow, I wonder why. So I start doing some investigating, start digging. And then I see all of these local outlets talking about how they're facing these shortages too. And then I'm like, why isn't the New York Times talking about all of these local jurisdictions saying that they can't get food? I don't know. Maybe they don't care. Maybe the media has evolved into pro-Trump, anti-Trump, and that's all we're ever going to have for the rest of our lives. The New York Times says, can we talk about Tucker Carlson and the NSA? That's appealing. I talk about that too. How often do they talk about, in the high-level cable news, China and war? Sometimes. I try to talk about what I think is most important. I look at the stories of the day and I say, here's a story I feel is most important. But I produce something like, this is crazy. I'm doing 4 hours of podcast every single day. 4 hours. I was recently told by a podcast network I do more than anybody else because I'm a lunatic. And it is what it is. But I look at these stories, we produce a lot of stories, and sometimes I talk about culture war issues, it's important. But I wonder why it is mainstream media isn't telling us these things. A little bit they are, like I said. Wall Street Journal is reporting on the grocery stores. But what about all of these shortages, man? Why do I have 2 local outlets talking about their local shortages Where's the big breaking story? Food shortages across the country. Why? Maybe. These outlets are worried if they say this, they'll cause a panic and people will start buying things up. Here's what I think. I think when grocery stores start speculating on food that doesn't last that long, in the next couple of months, things may get really bad. We're hearing now about the Epsilon variant, Delta plus COVID variant. Could there be a looming lockdown on the way? Maybe. Sydney just extended their lockdown another week. Maybe. But what are we getting from the mainstream media? Take a look at this mind-blowingly insane article. The upside to inflation, rising wages. Fear not, young peasant. It may be very difficult for you to source your meal, but don't worry. In a month or two or maybe a year, you'll get $1 raise. You still can't afford the food, but hey, you got a raise, right? Yeah, inflation's bad. Your savings will be decimated. Check it out from CNBC. As the economy picks up in the wake of the COVID pandemic, concerns about inflation are also gaining steam. Already, prices on some goods like cars are noticeably higher, stoking fears that a sudden uptick in inflation will decrease purchasing power over time. Although consumers may pay more for everyday items, it's not all bad news as far as households' income and spending goes. Companies facing a labor shortage are also paying more to get workers to walk in the door. This is not a good thing. Rising wages precipitate inflation. They think this is a good thing for you because they think you're stupid. If everybody is getting paid more, the labor, which is the biggest cost of any business, goes up. The cost to produce the product goes up. The product itself becomes more expensive, and it's already difficult. They think you're stupid. They're trying to keep you lulled into it. Look, they want to keep you sitting there twiddling your thumbs while they buy up the goods, while they buy up the farmland. Why is Bill Gates buying up all this farmland? Yeah, there's a lot of conspiracies, sure. Vox.com says, the controversy over Bill Gates became the largest private farmland owner in the U.S. When there's increasing food shortages, and this one really rich guy is buying up the places where the food is made, dude's going to make a buck, to say the least. He knows what's up. He's thinking about this. Hey, food shortages are coming. How can I profit off that? Well, you can buy the companies that make the food, like the manufacturing plants, that refine the food and process it. Okay, that's pretty good. Then we'll be selling. Hey, wait a minute. Get down to the grassroots, man. Get to the bottom, the base layer, the land itself. You want food? It grows on Bill Gates' property. But he is going to make a hot buck. Now, I'll tell you what, man. If it does hit the fan, gold ain't going to be worth anything. If there's a big collapse, anybody telling you to buy gold because of the apocalypse, they don't know what they're talking about. Buying gold because you want to hedge your bet against like failing fiat and you think the world is going to persist, which it really is, to be completely honest, that's a good bet. I think precious metals is a good bet. I'm not telling you to do anything, no financial advice. I think crypto, precious metals, and guns, and I always say like some household item that's hard to produce. Good bets. But in the absolute collapse, people are going to be like, that's cool that you got gold and all, but like, I need a bottle of water and a sandwich. I can't live on gold. So gold will have some value, probably. But the bet on gold is that the society is going to continue to function and people will continue to value it in society. Bill Gates is betting on something very different. He's buying up the farmland. Because at its base, like at the base level, the most important thing is the ability to eat. Okay, drink water, sure. But you can pull water from the air. No joke. You dig a little hole, you put some plastic or a cup down there, condensation will build on the edge of the plastic, drip into the cup, boom, you get water. It's an old survival technique. Maybe you don't have plastic, use a leaf. Use 2 leaves. Have one, and the condensation, will form on the sides, and then it'll drip down into the leaf below, and you can pull water from the air. Typically, it only works really at night. You got to find a stream or something, but hey, water is relatively abundant. What about food? Food's got to come from somewhere. You can forage, you can hunt, but that's tough. This guy's going to own up all that land. Them trying to tell you that your wages are going to go up are them telling you think short term. It's a stupid thing to do. You need to think long term, man. America is warned to brace for up to 4 years of inflation as Fed's preferred inflation measure posts biggest annual increase since 1992. Maybe what these markets are predicting is that there is going to be hyperinflation. The system won't collapse completely. Your wages will go up, but the cost of food is going to be skyrocketing. If I was planning on selling a steak within the next month, and the steak was going to be increasing by 5% every single day, compounding. Yeah, it makes sense to buy as many steaks as possible right now. Hey, I can spend $1 on a steak now, sell it to you for $100 at the end of the month. Make a lot of money, right? But the idea is, if I sell a steak to you for $100 at the end of the month, I'm still going to need $90 to buy the steak from the distributor because their prices go up too. They're just trying to brace for inflation. The Fed says it's coming. What have you done to brace for inflation? Let me tell you what else comes. When we talk about the labor shortage, we've also got it hitting Britain. Look, at Britain could face food shortages due to lorry driver crisis. This lack of drivers, it's not just in the U.S. People in Britain as well aren't driving trucks. Food's not making to its destinations. I'll tell you one thing, my friends. Today, you may have noticed there's like a little thing on my hand right there. Yeah, I was picking berries. We got berries all over the property. I went outside, collected some fresh eggs right from a chicken's butt. I know it's not really from the chicken's butt, I'm kidding. But right to the chicken coop, grabbed some eggs, went to the garden, picked a bunch of cherry tomatoes and a zucchini, and I fried it all up. That was my breakfast, right from my own backyard. I didn't have to buy anything. I mean, I bought the chickens. All right, well, I raised them from babies. They were cheap. They eat bugs. We pay for their feed for the most part, but you can let your chickens graze. I'm trying to be as self-sustaining as possible. So we have a garden, we have vegetables, we got zucchinis, cucumbers, tomatoes, pumpkins. We're growing pumpkins. Are getting all big. And we got chickens. Chickens are growing up, doing their chicken business. That's what I'm trying to do because when I pay attention to this stuff, I get worried about international food shortages, rising gas prices around the world, infighting in OPEC could mean $4 gas prices. I mean, this is freaky stuff. You got to pay attention to what's going on. When gas prices go up, everything else will go up. All of this I am paying attention to. The increase in inflation. But let me just stress something. If people aren't working, nobody's making the food. If people aren't in grocery stores, there's not going to be anyone to stock the food. If nobody's at McDonald's, you can't go to McDonald's. That we understand. But a lot of people are like, so what? So I'll go to the grocery store and I'll take care of myself. Yeah. How about that? Subway trips canceled over staff shortages soar to a pandemic high. July 5th, 2021 from thecity.nyc. People in New York don't drive. Some people do. People don't know this about Manhattan. A lot of the streets are commercial parking only because they don't want people parking their cars and leaving them there all day because trucks got to come in and make deliveries and people got to come in and work for their business. So people take the subway. What are you going to do if you live in New York and the subway doesn't work? Oh, you're going to ride your bike. Okay. How are you going to carry your groceries home for your family on your bike? Okay, you're going to have to get a bigger basket. And yeah, you can do it. That'll consume more energy. All of this, whether intentional or not, is very much so a great reset. Gas shortages, food shortages, stores stockpiling, inflation skyrocketing. I don't think there's going to be an apocalypse, but I do think there is going to be a curtailing of the luxury that so many people live in. Me, I think it is a gift that I wake up in the morning, we got cherry tomatoes. I walk right up, pull a cherry tomato right off, pop it in my mouth. Oh, they are so delicious, man. You people living in the cities, without this stuff, you are missing out. The bigger tomatoes are a lot harder, man, because the critters come in and they snatch those big old tomatoes. But the zucchinis are fine. The cucumbers are great. Oh, we're going to pickle the cucumbers. The fresh eggs from the chickens, man, you are missing out. So I take a look at these cities. I take a look at the ideology of the left and what they've been talking about, and it seems like they're going to get what they want. They say people consume too much. They say too much fossil fuel is being used. Yeah. What's happening now? No truck drivers? That to me is strange. Who doesn't want a job? I guess a lot of people. If people aren't driving trucks, people aren't burning fuel. But if people aren't driving trucks, the food's not coming into the cities. Surrounding the mountain area where we live in, there's something called wine berries. They're an invasive berry species. They're everywhere. We go out for 20 minutes, we get a big old bowl of berries. We got mulberries everywhere. We got blackberries. We got black raspberry. I'll tell you what does not consume fossil fuels, just eating the berries from the backyard. But people in cities can't do this. So I have some predictions. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I can't tell you what to do, but I think there's going to be a continuing exodus from cities because there's going to be less and less food. The food's going to become more and more expensive while my food becomes cheaper. So think about this. Shortage of drivers, meaning trucks aren't going to be coming into the cities. There's going to be less food, more expensive food. Gas is going to become more and more scarce because no one's delivering it. Now, for me, I live out in the middle of nowhere. I have a decent amount of my food is my own food. Like my breakfast was, okay, I put cheese on it to be fair. Bought that from the store. 90% of what I ate this morning was just garden fresh chicken and veggies. I feel fantastic. It's great. I still rely on market for a lot of the meats. We don't have any chickens we can eat right now, like the full chickens. We don't have goats or anything like that, but we're planning on expanding the operation and being more self-sustaining. We're still going to rely on the local farms, but people in cities can't do this. If you don't got gas, the food can't come in. If the food doesn't come in to the stores here, well, we're going to source from local farms. Local farms can't feed everybody, but there's a lot more self-sustaining farm work going on here than in cities. People are going to be forced to flee these cities. People already don't want to work there. They're stinky. There are people who are going to work remote, which they can. The prices will be too high. If there is an ongoing gas shortages, which we are seeing because people aren't driving, and there's a shortage of drivers. Check this out. Here's another crazy thing. Local driver reacts to rideshare shortage. It's getting harder and harder to transport people around. So here's what I think. All of these stresses, inflation and everything, is going to make living in a city impossible. People are going to have to move out to the middle of nowhere. People who live in the middle of nowhere are a bit more self-sustaining. I've mentioned this before, and a lot of people disagree, but I think it's true. When you live in the middle of nowhere, you have a septic system. That means you do your business, it goes into this big thing, and bacteria destroys a lot of it, and then the water rises and drains out into your leach field. When done properly, our guy, he comes out and he says, guys, if you do this right, you'll never have to call me again. And we're like, a lot of dumb people don't know how to use these systems, so we'll probably end up calling you again, but it's like every few years or something. They said I've done right. I was talking to one guy who works the systems, and he's like, my system, I don't got to worry about because I know exactly what can and can't go in there and how you dispose of things properly. Big cities funnel all of the waste into the same place. Now, there are treatment plants, but then you get big, huge piles of human waste. What do? In many places, they just dump it into the water. Not your drinking water. In Chicago, a lot of it gets dumped into the lake. Now, people say, oh, no, it's treated before that happens. Yeah, but there's overflow. Seriously, there's overflow. So they have like a light system. I don't know if they still do this, but there's like a light. It's like red, green, and yellow. Red means don't go in the water, it's infected. Yellow means it's probably okay, but be cautious. And green is like, hey, the water's clean this time. All the water's flowing down in Chicago, and it's a lot of wastewater and bacteria and pollution. On the coasts, they say we treat the water, but what happens when it rains? The system overflows, and that waste flows out. It is all hyper-concentrated. Long story short, the people who push the Great Reset never let a good crisis go to waste. I'm not saying they're conspiring behind closed doors and laughing and twirling their mustaches, but they all certainly agree that people should be living more sustainable lives. They've been saying it for a long time. If you move out to the country, to the suburbs, just somewhere where you have more land, you absolutely will be more sustainable and more in balance with nature. These big cities are problems. So it seems like there's a pressure, not a conspiracy. What do I mean by that? When you have many prominent individuals in industry who believe something, they don't need to conspire. They just say, we're going to act in this direction. We don't want to produce these things. We don't want plastics. We don't want pollution, and we don't want to be in cities. That creates a tremendous pressure on society that changes things. People don't want to drive cars anymore. People don't want to provide drivers anymore. They don't want to support the gasoline industry. They don't want to support factory farming. Enough pressure in those directions, and everyone else will be forced to follow suit. So, what does this mean for you? I think in the next few months, expect to see some very serious inflation. I've thought about this, and I'm looking at the housing market, and I'm trying to figure out a good place to hedge fiat. So I've looked into guns, gold, and Bitcoin. I'm not telling you what to do. Silver as well. Metals, guns, Bitcoin. And so far, it's been a good bet. A very, very, very good bet. I can't predict the future. Maybe I'm wrong about everything. Maybe this is just that wave traveling down the rope like I described, and once the whip cracks, everything goes back to normal. We stabilize again. Maybe. I think there's a tremendous pressure from powerful individuals to get people out of cities, to reset, to ride bikes, not drive cars, to work remotely, anything they can do to reduce carbon emissions, like they've been saying for so long. I don't think it's a conspiracy when they come out and say it, or when Bill Gates says he's buying up all the land. I think it's fairly obvious what they want. And what I mean by they is just powerful, influential people. They've been saying it to our faces. Don't be surprised when it happens because you are pushed into it. So all I can really say is think about this information, figure out what's best for you and your family, maybe get out of these cities. You want to stand by the rioting? No. Hey, I wonder why the rioters aren't being prosecuted. Some of them are. Maybe it's because they're creating a pressure on the system, which makes people want to leave cities and go live in the middle of nowhere, like me. I lived in Philly. Now we're in the middle of nowhere, and I love it. We were growing our own vegetables in the Philly burbs, for sure. It was awesome. Jalapenos, man. We're growing our own basil, rosemary, kale, and jalapenos. Man, I sliced these jalapenos up and I threw them on my eggs. Beautiful. I love it. I'm glad I got out of the city. And I'm sure many other people are as well. Just don't bring those broken policies with you. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. tonight over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out. I'm sorry, Timcast IRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.